Here we go. I want to look ahead to the upcoming season. Obviously, we're going to dive fully more in depth into this, but I mean, we got to start right at the top of this thing with the team that has dominated this conference for literally decades right now, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks, whom Bill Self seems to have right back at the top, has replenished what he lost. Yeah. Recently got Johnny Furphy in the mix from Australia, who reclassified. Are you with the consensus on this? Do you have Kansas at the top of the echelon, or is somebody going to sneak in and snatch it away from the team in Lawrence?
Kansas fans, here's your clip. Kansas is the team in the Big 12. Kansas is the team in the Big 12 until somebody else wants to come and dethrone them. Look, they're going to lose games. They're going to lose to a Kansas State with Jerome Tang, who's really come on. They're going to lose in Waco against a solid Baylor team under Scott Drew. I think Kansas, just like everybody else, will go through some growing pains and lose to a Utah, lose to Cincinnati unexpectedly, because that's what college basketball is. There's a ton of parity in this sport. But look at Big 12 championships. Look at national championships. Look at Final Fours and Sweet 16s. In the entire Bill Self era, he has been Big 12 basketball. The Kansas Jayhawks are Big 12 basketball. They are my preseason number one in Big 12 basketball because there's not anybody else there to dethrone them yet. You thought Baylor could. Baylor could become the team in this conference. But then right from Baylor's grasp, Kansas snatched it away with a national championship. It reminds me of, follow with me here, Ole Miss won a national championship in baseball, right? Became the king of college baseball. The year before that, Mississippi State won. They've always been little brother, and they finally get the national championship before Ole Miss. They can become the flagship team of the state. And then bam, Ole Miss snatches it the year after, and Mississippi State fans have been silent ever since. In Big 12 basketball,
still ringing.
Yeah, no kidding. As good as Baylor's been in Big 12 basketball, Kansas comes and silences any conversation of Baylor becoming the team in this league. So they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose 5-7 games a year in the Big 12. Everybody is. That's how it has been for the last 10 years. But Kansas is Big 12 basketball.
Drake, if you were looking at this and you said there is one team that could be the team that dethrones Kansas this year, who's it going to be? Is it Texas on their way out the door? Is it Houston on their way in the door? If you had to pick one non-Kansas team to win the regular season or conference tournament, who would it be?
Yeah, this is a really tough one because you have so many of those teams in limbo, right? I look at a Texas Tech and think, what could you do for me? There's a chance that Texas Tech surprises a lot of people because they've been so good recently, especially as hard as it is to play in Lubbock. You look at TCU, J.B. Dixon, as good as they were last year. What could you do? What could Oklahoma State do? But the one team that I have circled that could win right now is not an expansion. I think Houston could take that step and dethrone Kansas. They are the only expansion team that I could see finishing in the top 2-3 of this league. But I think Kansas State is going to be such a thorn in Kansas' side. And what's going to win them a lot of games is defense and consistency. Kansas State can have a really bad shooting night and still put up 85 points. And the defense, it's because they generate turnovers. Kansas State is going to make a lot of people really uncomfortable. And they're going to beat Kansas. At least once they're going to beat Kansas next year. They're my pick. I love Jerome Tang. Close friend. I love Jerome Tang, and so I'm siding with him here. It's a heart pick. I think Kansas State, granted, not a lot of folks would say it, but they're right there, right behind Kansas next season.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not but root for Jerome Tang and what he's doing? I mean, that guy alone has got to be worth a couple points a game on the sideline.
Bingo.
And in your hearts, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, so, yeah.
Drake, you talked about the expansion teams and said, Houston to you is really the only one that will probably be upper tier in the Big 12 this year, which is the Big 14 this year, I guess we're looking at. Of the other three, of BYU and Cincy and UCF, what are we expecting from them this year, in your opinion?
Yeah, Cincy's in a rebuild. They're not going to tell you that. They don't want you to know that, but they are, and you have to. When the Hall of Fame legendary coach leaves, you automatically go into a rebuild. It's not the conventional one. You're not, scrapping house, but at the same time, you have to relearn how to win without the Hall of Fame coach on the sidelines. So Cincinnati is still in that limbo of, okay, what is our future without Mick Cronin? And it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to recover without him on the sidelines. Then you look at a team in UCF where you go, oof, these might be the guys who don't win a lot of basketball games. You see, the fans have shifted a lot of energy to football, where I do believe they're a sleeper to make some noise, finish in the top 5 at the Big 12. In basketball, I don't think so. I don't think so. They're going, look, Isaac, it's not even law of averages. It's just the way things go. Somebody has to finish 14th. Somebody has to, and it might be UCF. Then there's BYU. And I love BYU fans. I love BYU. I love what they stand for as an institution. But at some point, the school has got to get serious about basketball. They've got to get more serious about basketball. They could be, there's no reason BYU shouldn't be good year in and year out with the brand they carry. And again, somebody's got to finish past the top 10. They're a sleeper pick for me to make the NCAA tournament as a surprise. But at the same time, they could finish at 12 or 13 if they don't decide pretty quickly, hey, we're going to consistently put basketball up at the top where football is for that school.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. We've seen it consistently in the West Coast Conference where Gonzaga would go to Provo and lose to BYU. And Mark Pope, I mean, Mark Pope has that Kentucky heritage. He knows what it takes to be a champion. And so never going to count out the Cougs out there in Utah. Well, Drake, you kind of hit on this in the last segment, and let's wrap with this conversation here today. As the Big 12 expands to this year 14 teams, next year 16, still wild. Could a team, you said we might now have a 10-team league getting into the NCAA tournament, or 10 teams from this league getting into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Do you legitimately think a team could finish 10th or 11th in the Big 12 standings, maybe not this year, but next year, and still reasonably expect to make the NCAA tournament? Expect for the selection committee to look past the L's that are piling up on their resume.
So we're talking 16 teams in this standpoint.
Yeah, let's say the 24-25 season. Could a team finish, let's just go 10th. Let's just make it that nice round number.
Yeah.
And have a reasonable expectation of being, like, hey, we're on the bubble, but we're getting in.
As long as they're above 500 in the Big 12, every team above 500 in the Big 12 makes it into the big dance. So if, say, the Big 12 goes to a 20-game, 22-game conference format, and a team goes 11-11 and finishes at 10th, which is going to happen. I know what you're thinking at home, like, 11-11, that puts you at 8th.
There's going to be a really good basketball team with that record.
Bingo. You'd be a really good So if, and here's the deal. There are going to be 3 or 4 teams that only sneak away with 4 or 5 wins. So with that, when you're so top loaded, your number one team might be 13-7 in the Big 12. Your number one team might be 14-6 or 15-7 if you go to 22 games. So position right now at the Big 12, where if you sit at 10th and you're 11-11, you're 11-9, you absolutely deserve to be in March Madness. You absolutely deserve it. Again, the top 10 teams will go. And I think the 10th team will finish at 500 or better, because there are going to be a couple of doormats that just can't. When you try to get your feet up underneath you in this conference, you get knocked right back down. You saw it last year with a quality Oklahoma team that at the end of the year just couldn't find that groove again, because you're getting beat down week in and week out. And I'm sorry, that's the nature of this game in this conference.
Yeah. And here's the thing for me, Drake, you talked about the pillow games earlier. I think the big difference now is, in as recently as last season, you could lose to anybody and be fine, because everything was essentially a quad 1 game or a high quad 2. Now you can't afford the interesting thing is you can continue to take losses, but it's got to be the right losses.
Yep.
You can't lose to UCF at home now, right? Like, so there is that built in of not every loss and victory is going to be created as equal as it was. So I think that is the thing that's going to be not just what the actual number is, wins and losses, but who those were too. And so teams have to avoid those bad losses now, which they used to, like, you used to not be able to have a bad loss in the Big 12. And so that's the one landmine that teams are going to have to watch out for going forward.
What's so interesting about that too is your 10th best team is going to lose at home to UCF. So somebody's going to sneak up, and it's going to happen, and you're going to think, oh, that might do us in. We live in a society where the 10th best team in the Big 12 is a top 30 Ken Pom team, where the 10th best team in the Big 12 might be Oklahoma State, and they'll be a top 30, 35 Ken Pom team. That it's tough to make a case that you're going to leave that team out. So yeah, you're going to have the home loss to UCF, right? Oregon's going to have the home loss to Cal until they depart, and have the home loss to Rutgers.
But all those bubble teams are going to have some kind of war. That's a great point.
Bingo. And for your home loss to UCF, you have a road win against Kansas State, and that's gonna book you a ticket.
I love it. Great stuff, Drake. It's going to be so fun to watch this come together and how the landscape continues to shift. But, man, we got multiple years of Big 12 movement in and out, and I know you're going to have a blast covering it all, and you're going to knock it out of the park. We, Andy and I, the hosts of this show, are so excited for you and excited to have you on as we continue to look at the Big 12.
Whenever you need me, Isaac, I'm right here. They do not call it the small 12, and they never will.
Let's medium 12. No, I'm just kidding. Big 16. You love to see it. Folks, thanks so much for making Locked On College Basketball your first listen or watch every single day. You everydayers, we love to have you joining us. If you're a visitor, first-time guest, welcome in. The water's fine. Make sure you check out both of these shows, Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Big 12. You can follow Drake on Twitter at Drake C. Toll or me at Isaac Shade. Go ahead, subscribe on audio and video platforms. Please make sure also to smash the like button, leave comments on the show. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.
Yeah.